because British classic owners have accepted their fate and no longer see anything unusual about it. So here are 3 things nobody tells you, but probably should. Number 1, you will smell permanently of petrol. This is not a metaphor, it's a lifestyle. Somewhere, deep inside the soul of a British classic, whether it's an old MGB, a Triumph Spitfire, or a slightly too confident Jaguar XJ6, there is a faint but persistent desire to perfume its owner. You step out of the car after a lovely drive, take a deep breath, and there it is, that unmistakable blend of petrol, old leather, and maybe the ghost of a previous owner's pipe smoke. You'll think you've imagined it. Your friends will assure you that you haven't, and eventually you'll stop trying to get rid of the smell and simply accept that it's part of your personal brand. Number 2, electrical issues are a bonding exercise. Some people say the British invented romance. I say they invented character, building wiring looms. If you own anything with the words Lucas anywhere near it, you're not just a driver, you're in a long-term relationship with the Prince of Darkness himself. One day the indicators work, the next day they're on a spiritual retreat. Your headlights may or may not join you. But here's the thing, every time you fix something, or jiggle a connector, or threaten the car with a multimeter, you feel genuinely proud. Modern cars don't give you that. They give you error codes and judgment. A classic gives you opportunities for personal growth. And number 3, the real thrill isn't the driving, it's the starting. Every British classic owner knows that sacred moment. You sit down, turn the key, and hold your breath. Will it fire up instantly, like an enthusiastic Austin Mini on a sunny day? Or will it cough, think about life, and then decide that today is not the day? That moment, that glorious, unpredictable, slightly anxious moment, is the true heartbeat of British motoring. When it does start, you feel victorious. When it doesn't, you shrug because you've packed tools. You always pack tools. You could be going to the shops for milk, and you'll have a toolkit in the boot, just in case your Triumph decides it fancies a roadside picnic. But here's the secret. These 3 things point to British classics aren't perfect, and we don't want them to be. The little quirks, the smells, the gremlins, they're all part of a relationship that feels alive. Modern cars do everything flawlessly, and somehow that's less interesting. A classic gives you stories, it gives you character, it gives you a mild but constant sense of adventure. So yes, nobody tells you these 3 things, but once you've lived with a British classic, you wouldn't trade them for anything, except maybe a lift home when the starter motor gives up. There's a funny thing that happens when you spend time with an old car. You start off thinking you're the one looking after it, keeping it running, coaxing it through its quirks, forgiving it for the odd rattle or drip. But eventually you realize something else is going on. The car is teaching you something too. And one of its favorite lessons is this: slow down. Classic cars don't rush. They can't. They were born in a time before instant everything, before touch screens, notifications, and the strange modern belief that faster is always better. When you drive an old machine, you feel that difference immediately. There's a certain unhurried rhythm to the way it warms up, wakes up, and decides whether it's in the mood to cooperate today. And if you try to push it, it will remind you, gently or not, that patience is part of the deal. What's surprising is how quickly that patience becomes a pleasure, because when you're in a classic, you're not just travelling through space, you're travelling through time, you're driving something built with hands, not algorithms. You start listening more closely to the engine, noticing small changes, paying attention to the behaviour of the gearbox or the weight of the steering. Without even realising it, you drop out of the mental rush of the day and into something far more grounded. It's a bit like a moving meditation, not the sit cross-legged on a cushion type, but the sort where your attention is anchored to the sound, the feel, the moment right in front of you. You can't drive a classic car while doom scrolling or worrying about 10 different emails. It demands your presence, and that presence becomes a kind of refuge. There's also a humility to it. Classic cars have no interest in your schedule. They don't care about the meeting you're late for or the message you haven't answered. They operate on their own timeline with their own temperament. And once you accept that, life gets a bit lighter. You stop fighting the clock. You stop trying to force everything. You breathe a little more. And in that space, you rediscover something modern life quietly stole. The simple joy of driving for its own sake. A slow cruise, a long corner taken with care. The sensation of being connected to a machine that asks you to participate, not just sit there. It reminds you that moving slowly isn't the opposite of progress. Sometimes it's the only way to feel where you're actually going. So yes, old cars break and fuss and throw the occasional tantrum, but along the way they also teach us how to let go, how to pay attention, and how to enjoy the journey instead of sprinting from one destination to the next. In their own stubborn, charming way, classic cars show us a truth we tend to forget. You don't have to live fast to live well. Sometimes the best moments are found in the slow lane. You know, whenever I'm around classic cars, I'm struck by this quiet realization. Every old engine you see has lived more life than most of us ever stop to notice. We look at these machines as objects, as hobbies, as projects to fix on a Sunday. But somewhere in the metal, in the noise, in the wear and tear, there are stories tucked away. Sometimes I think that's what draws us to them, not the horsepower or the rarity, but the history that hums beneath the surface. Think about it, every engine misfire was once a moment of worry for someone. Every smooth pull-through second gear was once a burst of pride. That gentle tick on the overrun, someone else heard it long before you did. They wondered what it meant. They listened closely to the rhythm, just like you do now. Old engines collect people. They collect the hands that worked on them, the families that drove in them, the places they broke down, and the journeys they carried us through. A car that's 40 or 50 years old isn't just running on fuel, it's running on memory, all that maintenance and tinkering we do. Sometimes I think we're not restoring machines, we're restoring moments that would otherwise be forgotten. And the funny thing is, the parts that frustrate us the most are the ones with the richest stories. That stubborn bolt that refuses to move. Someone else fought with it in '84. That strange rattle that appears only on left turns. It probably annoyed 3 different owners before you. You're part of a lineage now, a caretaker in a long line of caretakers. The beauty of an old engine isn't in how perfect it runs. It's in the traces of life you can feel when it fires up. That first cough on a cold morning, the little shake as it settles into idle, the deep breath before it comes alive. It's like the car is remembering itself. You're not just starting an engine, you're waking up a piece of the past, and maybe that's the real magic. Modern cars are incredible, but they don't have that connection. They haven't had time to gather a soul. A classic car has lived through decades of roads, weather, mistakes, triumphs. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the stories, the long trips, the late night drives, the arguments, the laughter, the music on the radio that hasn't played in years. An old engine teaches you to pay attention, to feel instead of calculate, to notice the small things, the way the throttle responds, the smell of warm oil, the shift in tone when the revs rise. There's nothing digital to smooth it out, nothing artificial to hide the imperfections. It's honest, it tells you exactly how it feels, for better or worse. And in a world full of polished surfaces and perfect feedback, that honesty is refreshing. So next time you start up an old car, pause for just a moment. Listen to the churn, the catch, the first breath it takes. That sound has echoed across time. It connected someone's past to your present, and one day it'll become part of someone else's story too, because engines may be made of metal, but the lives they carry, those are made of us. and every one of those lives leaves a little trace behind, tucked somewhere deep inside the noise, waiting for you to hear it. There was a time when people used to go out for a drive for no reason at all. No errands, no deadlines, no navigation voice telling you to turn left in 300 yards. Just the simple joy of moving through the world with no particular destination. We've forgotten that a little. Modern driving is all efficiency now. Fastest route, least traffic, minimal time wasted. But somewhere along the way, we traded away the small pleasure of wandering, the feeling of taking the long road simply because it felt nicer under the tyres, the quiet moment when it's just you, the engine, and a bit of open sky. Classic cars remind you of that. They don't rush, they don't multitask, they're happiest when you're not trying to get anywhere quickly. In a strange way, they teach you to enjoy being unproductive, to savour the bends, the sounds, even the imperfections. And maybe that's why they still pull us in. Not because they're fast or convenient, but because they invite us back into a way of driving that feels almost forgotten, a way of being really slower, more attentive, a little more human. Every now and then it's worth taking a drive with no purpose, except the drive itself, no plan, no hurry, just the road unfolding at its own gentle pace. The lost art of driving for pleasure isn't lost at all. It's just waiting for us to remember. There's a certain philosophy that only really reveals itself when you spend enough time with a classic car. You don't notice it at first. At first, you're too busy wondering if that noise is normal, or if that smell is new, or if the fuel gauge is lying to you again. But give it a little time, and you start learning something deeper, something you won't find in any manual or workshop guide. Classic cars teach you about the slow lane, not the motorway slow lane. Although, let's be honest, with some classics you're going to be spending a lot of time there too. I mean the slow lane as a way of moving through life, a way of letting things unfold at their own pace, instead of trying to drag them forward like a reluctant alternator bolt. Because classic cars don't do rushing. They don't care how busy you are today. They don't care that you're late for dinner. They live in a world where warming up takes as long as warming up takes. You turn the key, the engine coughs, clears its throat, considers its options, and eventually decides, fine, I'll run today, but only because you asked nicely. And that's where the philosophy begins. In a modern car, you press a button and go. In a classic, you prepare to go. You listen, you pay attention, you learn its moods, you adapt, and somewhere in the middle of that dance, you start realizing how rarely you give anything your full attention anymore. You can't multitask in a classic car. You can't check your phone, adjust a playlist, and send a quick message while flying down the road. The car will simply not allow such nonsense. It asks you, politely, firmly, and occasionally with steam, to be present, hands on the wheel, ears tuned in, eyes on the world, and surprisingly, it feels good. Suddenly you're not rushing, you're not chasing time, you're just there in a moving piece of history, in a moment that can't be hurried. Life stops being a sprint and becomes a gentle roll. Classic cars also teach humility, because nothing reminds you that you're not in control, like a machine built in an era when weatherproofing meant try not to drive in the rain. You can have the perfect plan for the day and your car will respond with, that's adorable. But today we're learning about patience instead. Yet, weirdly, that's where the joy comes from. Not in the breakdowns themselves. We don't have to pretend those are spiritual experiences, but in the way they nudge you into letting go. You can't be in the fast lane when the universe, through your carburetor, is gently suggesting you slow the hell down. And then there's the driving itself, the unhurried steering, the engine note that actually changes when you listen to it. The road you start noticing because you're not flying over it at the speed of regret. Classic cars remind us that slowness isn't laziness, it's clarity. Slowness lets you see the world instead of blur past it. Slowness lets you notice the small things. Slowness makes the journey matter. So yes, old cars leak, squeak, rattle, sulk, and occasionally set fire to themselves, but they also carry a quiet wisdom, a philosophy, a reminder that not everything in life needs to be done faster. Sometimes the best way to get where you're going is to ease into the slow lane, breathe, and let the ride unfold at its own charming, slightly unpredictable pace. You know, people often assume classic car ownership is all glamour and sunny Sunday drives, but anyone who actually owns one knows the truth. It's a spiritual practice, a moving meditation, a slightly oily path to enlightenment, because the first thing a classic car teaches you is patience. Nothing happens quickly, not warming up, not fixing things, not waiting for that part that was in stock last week. You learn to slow down, breathe, and accept that the universe occasionally manifests itself in the form of a seized bolt. And then there's awareness. Modern cars let you drift through a journey half asleep. A classic won't let you get away with that. It whispers, nudges, complains, celebrates. You start listening deeply to the engine note, to the vibration in the pedal, to that tiny new squeak you swear wasn't there yesterday. It's the automotive version of mindfulness, staying present, paying attention, noticing the moment before it becomes a problem. There's humility too. Classic cars do not care about your schedule, your plans, or your ego. They will embarrass you at petrol stations. They will refuse to start when you're trying to impress someone. They remind you gently, occasionally, not so gently, that control is an illusion, and somehow that's freeing. But the real zen is in the relationship, because it is a relationship. You invest time, care, curiosity. The car gives you stories, sensations, a kind of companionship. You begin to appreciate the effort over the outcome, the drive over the destination. You savor the journey because you have to. You can't rush it. And that slowness becomes a gift. So yes, classic car ownership can be frustrating. It can test your patience, your wallet, your sense of humor, but it also teaches presence. It rewards attention. It turns everyday drives into something richer, more textured, more human. And maybe that's the point. In a world running at full speed, a classic car pulls you back into the moment and says, here, be here, feel this, enjoy the ride. There's something classic car owners don't tell you. Well, a few things, actually. Things you only learn once you've lived with one of these old machines, long enough for it to test your patience, your wallet, and sometimes your sanity. First, let's get this out of the way. You will smell like petrol, not in a poetic motorsport heritage way. More like, why does my jacket smell like a carburetor again? It just happens. It's part of the lifestyle. You stop noticing, other people don't. And then there's the moment, every classic owner knows it. You get into the car, turn the key, and there's this tiny pause where you hold your breath and think, come on, please behave today. That split second where time slows down and you brace yourself for either bliss or character building. We don't talk about that moment, but we all live it. And here's another one. Owning a classic car means accepting that strangers will talk to you. At petrol stations, in car parks, at traffic lights, you become a magnet for conversations that start with, my uncle had one of these, or I remember these when I was young. You learn to smile, nod, and enjoy it, because that connection is part of the joy. We also don't mention how emotionally invested we get in the smallest things: a new rattle, immediate heartbreak, a smooth run with no issues, instant euphoria, a sunny day. You're pulling the car out whether you had plans or not. Classic ownership turns adults into hopeful children. Every drive is Christmas morning, but here's the biggest thing classic car owners don't tell you. We don't actually own these cars. Not really. We're just the current caretakers. These machines have outlived owners, mechanics, fashions, governments, entire eras, and somehow they're still here, bending time a little bit every time they start up. We get to be part of that story for a while, a tiny part of a journey that started long before us and will probably continue long after we're gone. See, the secret isn't in the horsepower or the shine of the paint or even the drive itself. It's in the feeling, the sense that you're touching history with your hands, hearing it through the engine, carrying it across roads. It's travelled before. Classic car owners don't tell you these things because, well, it sounds sentimental, and we like to pretend we're here for the engineering and the performance. But really, we're here for the connection, the stories, the nostalgia, the moments when a machine feels almost alive. So if you've ever wondered why people put up with the quirks, the smells, the conversations at petrol stations, the unpredictable starts, it's because these cars give us something modern life rarely does anymore: a reason to slow down, to pay attention, to care about something that isn't disposable. And that's why, despite everything we don't tell you, we wouldn't trade this madness for anything. You know, sometimes I wonder why we still bother with these old machines. They're slower, heavier, fussier, and occasionally leak their feelings on the driveway. And yet, somehow, they still matter, because every classic car invites you into a different pace of life. A pace where you're not fighting the clock, the emails, or the 10,000 urgent notifications. You're just driving, listening, feeling. Modern cars remove a lot of that. They're brilliant, of course, fast, safe, quiet, but they also insulate us from the world. A classic car, on the other hand, refuses to let you stay on autopilot. Here, you have to be awake, present. You have to listen for that tiny rattle that wasn't there yesterday. You have to feel the road through the wheel, the way the car leans, breathes, settles. It's an experience, not a commute. And that's the strange magic of these old things. They offer something modern life keeps forgetting: connection, connection to the machine, connection to the moment, connection to a world where things had weight, smell, texture, and didn't all depend on software updates. Classic cars also bring people together. You never see strangers gathering around a 3-year-old crossover in a car park, but a 40-year-old saloon. That's an invitation. Stories start, memories surface. Everyone has a favourite relative who had one just like it. And maybe that's why they still matter, because they remind us that life isn't just about efficiency. It's not always about getting somewhere as fast as possible. Sometimes it's about feeling the journey again. These cars are rolling pieces of history, yes, but they're also reminders to slow down, to pay attention, to enjoy the simple things. So why do classic cars still matter in a modern world? Maybe because, in a world trying to rush us, they're one of the few things that gently ask us to take our time. You're listening to Classic Car Radio. If you want some quiet thoughts in the background, you're in the right place. There are plenty of complicated ways to feel better in life. Meditation apps, cold plunges, inspirational quotes from people who definitely wake up earlier than you. But there's one mood booster nobody talks about: mostly because the people who know are too busy trying to find parts on eBay, the classic car. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can something built in the 70s with the structural integrity of a sandwich and the reliability of a French electrical system improve your mood? Well, let me give you three very solid, very scientific reasons, or at least three reasons that work for me. Reason one, classic cars make you feel like the main character. Drive a modern car and you're basically piloting a dishwasher with headlights. Drive a classic and suddenly you're starring in your own film. A Citroën DS makes you feel like a time-traveling diplomat. A Triumph TR6 convinces you you're more charming than you actually are. And a Porsche 928, well, that just makes you feel like you should have a yacht, even if the closest thing you actually have is a kayak from Decathlon. There's something magical about the way old cars look, smell, and sound. They give you instant character development. Even your bad hair days look intentional when you're climbing out of a 1970s Alfa Romeo. Reason 2, classic cars force you to slow down, and slowing down feels good. It's impossible to be stressed while driving a Morris Minor. The car simply won't allow it. Try rushing and it will respond by quietly shaking its head and possibly removing a piece of itself in protest. Modern cars make everything